My name is Lisa Given. I am Director of the Social Change Enabling Impact Platform here at RMIT, and I sit across the schools of Global, Urban, and Social Studies and the School of Computing Technologies. This symposium is part of a broader event around HDR milestones and trying to kind of wrap around those milestone events, which are so important to all of our doctoral students, just a little bit of engagement around broader research issues. And when I was asked to kind of chair this symposium, I started thinking, what will that look like? And for me, research practice is obviously at the heart of PhD study, but it's also something that all of us should be reflecting on a regular basis. So that's a bit of the inspiration for today. I want to start by acknowledging the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we're conducting the business of the university today. RMIT respectfully acknowledges ancestors and elders past and present, and we also acknowledge the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business. Today's panel then is going to be looking at all of the things that go into fostering research relationships. We talk a great deal when we think about impact, the concept of impact and community engagement, about partnering outside of the university. This is a mantra. We talk with our researchers, we say, oh, you should build some partnerships, you need to connect with people, make some connections outside. But we don't always hear the voices of those partners that are involved in our projects. I hear them in hallways as researchers tell me amazing stories, or I go to events and I meet people face to face, which is amazing. But one of the events I wanted to put on this week was something where we could actually hear from our community and hear about that experience of being a partner on a project. So that's what we're going to be hearing today. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to turn over to Professor Catherine Johnson, who is our Associate Dean Research and Innovation in GUS in the School of Global, Urban, and Social Studies, and also incoming Dean starting in the new year. And she's just going to say a few words on behalf of the school.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here in a room. Generally, I see people on Teams, and it has been like that for a long time. So it's lovely to see people here together. And I'm really delighted to have been invited to do the introduction to this session. As Lisa's just said, that I think that kind of sense of coming back together is really important. It's really important for our HDR students. I know that the last few years have been very challenging for HDR students particularly, and also for many of the communities in which they work, live, and in which we do our research. So this forum really is a chance for us to connect, for HDR students to connect with each other, for us to generate new intellectual discussions, and I'm really excited about hearing from the panel tonight. It's also a chance for us to connect industry and community organisations with researchers. So, I hope these become a forum for where we can come together and we can, we've already started having a conversation about possible new collaborations, and that's the whole point of this kind of opportunity to get together. And it's also a chance to communicate and share our research, what we're working on, and what we're working on in partnership with kind of community organisations. Now, just to say a little bit about the kind of community-based impact. Now, my background is community psychology, so I'm also very excited to be here because of the content that we're going to hear about tonight. And I think we all hope that our research will make a difference. I think many of us who go into research, we want to make a difference, and we often talk about making a difference in the world. And kind of working in community partnerships is actually a key way to make that difference. And I think it's certainly something at the heart of the work that we do in GUS in terms of we're trying to make a difference in relation to policy, in relation to practice, and really we're making a difference in relation to people's lives. And that really is what we sort of share in our school. Now, research relationships is an interesting idea because of course, these can involve all kinds of different ways of working. They might involve collaboration, they might involve sharing our expertise, having a notion of distributed expertise. They might involve knowledge exchange, they might involve co-design, action research. These are all sort of different terms that we'll talk about. But all of them entail a process really of getting to know each other, of getting to understand each other, of understanding the different ways that we work, understand the different things that might be important to us. So, and also what really matters, I think, to communities. And I think it asks us as researchers to work in a different way than we would do, perhaps ordinarily, if we were going to the library and doing our research there. So they're not always the easiest way of doing research. They can be time-consuming because we have to build in that time to kind of form those relationships. But I think that they are actually the most effective way of doing research if we do actually want to make a difference to the communities that I think we both serve, but also the communities that we often come from. And I think we should kind of recognise that often these kind of relationships also come out of our own kind of engagement with the world and our own kind of place in the world. So I'm going to pass back over to Lisa for this panel, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing more about your work. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much, Catherine. Okay. Now I'd like to introduce our panel today, and I will just ask each of them to come forward as we say your names. Ah, look, pretty. Okay, so first up we've got Selba Gandoza-Luca, who is the founder and CEO of Afri-Aus Care Incorporated. In addition to being a trained mental health clinician and a culturally appropriate counselor, Selba's work at Afri-Aus Care has also seen her become a grassroots community leader and impassioned advocate for ending family violence and implementing the NDIS within the African Australian community. Selba is a member of the advisory board for the University of Melbourne's African Research and Engagement Initiative. She's a member of the advisory committee at Burnett Institute. She believes in evidence-based grassroots projects and is currently working with a number of different universities in Melbourne, including here at RMIT, and her evaluation and research papers are available online. She's a multiple award winner, and more recently she was awarded the 2021 Citizen of the Year by the City of Greater Dandenong and inducted as a local champion for the 2021 Victorian Honour Roll of Women inductees. Pleasure to have you here, Selba. Come on up. Thank you. You get your choice of the chairs in the middle. See where you might like. Great. Our second panelist is Abraham Quall, who manages a range of African Australian-focused projects, programs, and partner relationships in the non-for-profit sector for Afri-Aus Care. Abraham also works as the project manager for the RMIT and Afri-Aus Care Black Rhinos, a primary prevention approach collaboration project. Abraham, come on up. Fabulous. Next, we have Dr. Rachel Goff, who is lecturer and researcher in social work and human services here in the School of Gus at RMIT. Rachel joined the Bachelor of Social Science Psychology team in 2022 after completing their PhD at Federation University, Australia. Rachel's research interests include the intersection of design and applied social science, as well as collaborative and community-led methodologies to facilitate empowerment and social impact. Welcome, Rachel. And finally today we have Dr. Rob Cunningham, lecturer and Master of Social Work Field Education Coordinator, Social Work Discipline in the School of Gus at RMIT. And I have to say he's very kind to be stepping in at the 11th hour because our other panelist sadly has COVID. And so thank you very much, Rob, for doing this at last notice. Rob has worked in the social work field for 25 years. His experience includes Commonwealth, community, and private sectors, specializing in trauma-based work in Australia and internationally. Rob's PhD examined the long-term impacts of youth-based sports development programs. Rob's current research interests include participatory, trauma-informed action research. Okay, now you get to watch as I try not to knock that glass of water over. Okay, and now we're going to settle into business. So for the benefit of the audience, what we've done today is just craft a few, what I think of as prompting questions, just a handful of questions to kind of warm up our panelists, get them talking a little bit. And as we go through various topics towards the end of our prompting questions, we're then going to open it up to you as a group to also engage in dialogue with us. So please do take a note, think to yourself about how you might want to engage or other things that you might want to ask. And I think we've got people with a couple of microphones. So if you're all set, we will start with question number 1. And so obviously the goal with today was to really start to better understand what makes a successful research partnership, because it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen by magic. It takes a lot of work. As Catherine was saying, it can take a lot of time. So my first question is to you, Selba. Why is research needed in the community university space? What is the goal of doing co-design projects? And how do governments and funders, different philanthropists, how do they look on these types of relationships?
So the way, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. The way my brain works, you need to ask me one question at a time.
One question at a time. No multi-parters for you. So the first one is, why is research needed in the community university space? Why is this type of research so important?
I'll first of all ask a question to the audience. When you see an African person, if you're not African, that is, do you think you know everything about us? Hands up if you know everything about us. Correct, there is no hand up. So which means we have come to Australia to live. Where we left our countries, some people didn't live in good terms. War, hunger, everything. They have lost everything, and fortunately, because of humanitarian visas, people have come to Australia, and we are now citizens. Now, it is very important for universities to work with the African communities right on the grassroots, from bottom up, not up down. Because if it's bottom up, you will come and meet us and we'll do the projects. You will know what our needs are, what our challenges are. In so doing, in your clever way as academics, you are going to put it in a paper called evidence-based. And evidence-based is actually very important because it attracts funders, it attracts policy making as well. So, what do we do? For instance, at Afri-Aus Care, our foundation is based on Ubuntu. Ubuntu means I am because we are all equal. But what differentiates or separates us is the availability of opportunities. So, if the researchers can come to Afri-Aus Care programs, they will talk to real people. And if it's a co-design project, you have the questions, then whatever the people are going to answer in their own free space, not taking them away. Remember, these are community people. It means they will be open. And with Ubuntu, we always provide traditional food if possible. So where food is, people are going to talk about their problems. Whatever question you have, they are going to answer. What does that mean? You will have a great report. And that report is going to change the way people perceive about African people. Because sometimes when they see young people hanging around together, look at those thugs, look at those robbers. It's not like that. There is always a reason. Another thing is then the researchers can ask, if kids are behaving like this, what is the problem? When you get to all these points together, then you have solutions, policies, and we will all live in harmony, and you will know what African people are, and you will love us forever. So that is what it means for me. Universities need to come. Because if you don't have that connection, you will never know us. And people will continue to talk bad things about us. And I tell you what, we are working with Dr. Rob, we're working with Rachel, yeah? First-hand information, they have seen the people, like talking with them, getting a lot of information. And last time, I don't know whether it was you, the community didn't want to go. They still wanted to chat with people from university. So this is what we say, connection. People who don't have much to say, meeting with people who have the knowledge, together they will come up with information that can help.
That's a fantastic answer and a fantastic vision. I love it. And you hinted at the second question I had, which was around how the funders view this. So it sounds as though there then is money to support these kinds of co-designed projects?
Correct. So most of the times funding is given, and the way it works, they will not come to the ground, yeah? So the report will be, funding given, report will be written and go back to the government, and government said, yes, we are resolving the problem. But it is very important to have the university involved, then they will talk to the real people. Once they start talking to the real people, then the information that they can get, it will go back to the government. So it is very important, and I'm speaking broadly, the people from the government, they should value the work of the university to connect them with the community. This is where the issues will be resolved. Because just mere saying that, oh yes, we have helped, they got the money, the report is here, positive stories, it doesn't work like that. Positive stories need to come from the universities because they have met the real people, then the policies can be changed as well.
Got it.
Thank you.
Do others want to weigh in on this? Your views on, yeah?
Thank you. Look, I just will add how important the co-design is for funding at the moment for the work that we want to do. So we're working, just for the benefit of the audience, we're working on a youth-based sport development program, so RMIT and Afri-Aus Care and their Black Rhinos program. The problem with that particular field at the moment with sport-based youth development is a lot of the funding at the moment is short-term. So you have impact evaluation, you might have a 12-week program and very little time to be able to look in depth at some of the impacts. We're really lucky to have a 2-year Vic Health funded program, which allows us to do a co-design process. So really look in depth at what the community wants and work alongside the community to be able to achieve real change. Now that is 2 years. I still think some of these programs, you still see impact, and my PhD demonstrated this in the longer term. So looking 10 years, 15 years down the track, you're still seeing impact. So the longer term funding, the better. This project gives us a capacity to do that. But the problem in the field at the moment is a lot of the funding is short-term for up to 12 weeks at a time.
Right. So you have to be the master organizer to make that happen, yes. Rachel or Abraham, did you want to add to that comment?
Yeah, I think I'll come back to the first point on why research matters. So for community organizations, it's really critical. I mean, as people that see the impact that it has on people's lives daily, it's crazy to think that just words and a piece of research, data that's collected, can change someone's life entirely. Like, that's just crazy to think. So we start off, sometimes we forget that we need to be passionate about the work that we do, even as project managers for community organizations or social workers or researchers. We sometimes forget that, or life attacks us, and then we forget what we're actually doing. This is not just a salary. This is trying to impact people's lives and change it for the better. And that's not just their immediate life, it's the generations beyond that. So I think we need to always be passionate about the work that we do and continue to conduct research in areas where knowledge is lacking and work with the people that we're intending to impact. That's all I've got to say on that.
That's fabulous. That's why most of us get into research. We want to make the world a better place. Rachel, did you have anything to add?
We might come back to this a little bit later, but I just wanted to pick up on Rob's point around one of the challenges of the policy context being that funding is usually for short-term periods, and the real kind of proliferation of designerly ways of working as a bit of a, positive element of receiving, funding. One of the challenges with designerly ways of working, co-design, is that it doesn't easily fit within a project timeline either. It's not necessarily a methodology for project, rather it is a way of working, and it is a way of being in relationship and being in community with those who you are seeking outcomes for. And so I guess that's one of the tensions and one of the challenges, and we might have more to say about that later.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a beautiful segue. It's like I didn't feed that to you, but I love the segue to my next question, which is to Abraham, around, how do you make a meaningful, positive relationship in this type of a team? How do you ensure it's not a transactional thing, but really relational?
I think where it starts is just support. So even before we got into this project together, Afri-Aus Care and RMIT were already working closely together. So they were sending students over to Afri-Aus Care during the lockdowns. They're really supportive in so we'd communicate a vision and they'd always be supportive. And then once this opportunity presented itself, we worked together in designing what the application was going to be, what we intended to achieve, as opposed to them coming to us with a proposal and saying, this is what we want to do, are you for us? They came in with the mindset that, okay, there's funding here for an impact research grant. How can we do this together? And that's just flowed throughout the whole grants process. So even we've got constant regular meetings, so we're always involved in the whole process. Starting from ethics and beyond, even when we set up our focus groups, they're asking us, okay, how are we going to work with this community group? What's appropriate? What's going to work? What's not going to work? As opposed to coming to us saying, this is what you have to do. Can you do it? If not, we'll go find someone else to work with. But what's been really good about this particular relationship is that there's a lot of open communication. We maintain regular communication. But there's always, when we're progressing, we're always keeping each other updated. We've worked with various university partners before. You can feel the energy around the relationship that feels transactional. Even once the focus groups were completed, we maintained communication. So it wasn't a thing where it's like, okay, we've mined our resources, we've got what we needed. We'll come back to you when we need something else. We're still always talking. We're involved in the data analysis process, involved throughout the whole process. And I think that's what's been the most important thing up till this point. But beyond that, we speak as if we're co-workers. So if I speak to Rob about something, we're clear about what we want to achieve together. We work towards that together, and I think that's been really positive.
That's fabulous. It's as a qualitative researcher myself, I love this idea that because analysis is happening all the time, so that communication, that engagement back and forth is critical. Yeah.
What I will add is, because as people that work with community members regularly, we've got a lot of knowledge that just sits in our minds. So naturally, researchers will always come to us with theory, with something that seems like it's going to be practical. And sometimes they won't ask us, okay, is this practical? Is this going to work? But with this relationship, okay, we've been approached with an idea, and we've been able to comment on it, saying, okay, this is where it's going to work. This is not where and here it's not going to work there. And I think that's what's going to lead to really positive outcomes when we're in our implementation stage for our project.
Yeah, got it. And being open to hearing your expertise, what you bring to the table, and helping that to shape the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, exciting. Others want to weigh in on this one? Rob, Rachel, Selba?
I'm happy to. Do you want to go first?
You go first.
Yeah, look, transactional, I think it's an interesting way to put it. So I think what helps our team is, and I might be biased, but being a social work team, it's not about a transaction for us. It's not about a grant or it's not about completing a research project. It's about creating social change. So for us as social workers, we're committed to creating positive social change in the community. So what we see is not a 2-year project. As Abraham said before, we've been involved and it's been a reciprocal relationship. We've provided students for a number of years who got such an amazing experience through field education at Afri-Aus Care. And they were I believe, were able to contribute as well to Afri-Aus Care. So we see it as a long-term, sustained relationship that we hope will last for a long time, that goes beyond a 2-year funded project. And we want to see sustained change. We don't want the program to finish up in 2 years. We want to work on ways to be able to extend it into the long term, so we're sitting here in 10, 15, 20 years talking about what an impact it's had on the lives of participants.
Exciting.
So I'll first shout to Ron. Very, very passionate about grassroots organizations. And the team she chose, they're just fantastic. And even the team, when they came to work with our community, they were just so open. And even the community members, they didn't see any difference at all. It was just like, we're going to say anything. And I will say the questions, the way they were formed, fantastic. Whosoever did that, if I had something to give, I'll give. Because the people were just so open, the questions were just so good. I could see that, because we were not allowed to make any comment, Abraham and I, but I was just observing how the community were engaging, responding in the conversation. So for me, this is real research. People were relaxed. The researchers were just there to get more information from them. So I would say the team was great, and I believe they are going to get the information they wanted, and this will be one of the best research, I believe.
Exciting. I can't wait to hear how the analysis goes now. Very exciting. Rob, I'm going to come to you next with a question. So thinking about this concept of kind of what I think of as true evidence-based co-design practice, right? Like how we kind of think about that. How does that really lead to kind of effective social change? How does it actually bring about the outcomes and the impact from research that you want to see?
So look, the co-design process allows us to achieve what we see, will hopefully achieve what we see as real impact and outcomes. And that co-design process starts with working with community on what they see as the necessary outcomes. So part of that co-design process in these forums that we've been having with community in interviews is asking those questions in helping to develop the program. So what does success look like for participants or for the community? So what does a community member, if this program is to be successful, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What are they seeing? What kind of impacts and outcomes do they want for their community? So that's where it starts for us. And look, evidence-based is a really interesting thing. I'm a qualitative researcher as well, and look, there's some fantastic in the youth-based sport for development program. There's some fantastic survey-based or quantitative measures to be able to look at youth development. But are those types of evidence-based? Are they culturally informed? Are they trauma-informed? Do they fit the community that you want to work with? So we want to again go back to community and ask them, how do we measure this? Well, look, we know what success looks like, but how do we measure that success? What's the best way of getting that information? So without, I guess, going too much into where we are at the analysis, I'd suggest it's going to be really an evidence-based, produced through creative methodologies. It's going to be about storytelling. It's going to be about art-based type work, so really engaging with the community with the way that they want to communicate how it's impacted on their lives as well.
Right, fantastic. And so, Selba and Abraham, what does this evidence-based mean for you? What are you able to do with this evidence once you've kind of got your hands on it?
You see me smiling?
I do.
It means it's going to attract funders. They will be funding projects that are actually on the ground. Not only that, getting even students from university to come and do their placement so they can actually see the work that the research team has done is continuously going on. So that's how I feel that the partnership should not just stop here. It will continue. As I was talking before this, we have got so many projects coming up, so watch out the space.
Yes, indeed. It's very iterative. It just builds and new questions and yeah. Abraham?
I think what it does as well, because when we apply for a grant, they always want numbers, they always want stats, which sometimes doesn't lead to the best outcome for the participants. So what this kind of research does is it shows the government that, okay, this is an outcome that is actually measurable and is going to achieve positive things in that person's life, as opposed to, okay, we're funding you this amount of money, this is the amount of people that you have to work with this number of people, and if you don't, your project's a failure. Sometimes the best outcome is seeing even just one person's life shift completely, as opposed to small changes in 30 people's lives. Because that's not sustained. That person ends up coming back needing that exact same service again and again and again, which means we've got to go back and get more funding for the exact same thing. But if we can achieve the outcomes that I needed, say it's an employment outcome, that person now can then go work for themselves, has the money to support themselves and their family, which means they're less reliant on government for Centrelink, less reliant on just us as a community service organisation. What we want to do is support that person so then they can go out and continually support themselves, as opposed to constantly coming back to us, needing us. That doesn't provide good things for that person. So what this kind of research does is it removes those expectations from the government.
Fantastic. Rachel? Are
I don't know if
you
Rachel-
okay? Allergies, it's a brutal time of year. You'd think the rain would get rid of the allergies in the air, but no. Are you up to answering a question? Yes. Okay, cool. I hope. You hope. We were just talking a little bit about co-design and how, we build that evidence base. But going back, can you tell me a little bit then about the kinds of methods that you use? What does that co-design look like, and what are some of the challenges you have in playing with those methods?
Sure. So I guess, you can break designerly ways of working down into 3 different parts, right? So you've got the process of actually undertaking an iterative process of designing a solution to meet people's problems. You've got particular principles that you are designing to. And then you've got tools and activities that creatively assist a design team to be able to, reach the particular solution that a community is looking to embed within their community. Holding all of those things lightly and really getting to know the community that you are researching with and participating in the project with is probably the most important part. And so when we were looking to design out what this particular project looked like, coming at it from a particular kind of, here are some hunches or a particular framework that may work, but taking that and going, what do you think, community? And so we actually set up a focus group to test out some of the ideas that we had in terms of this is what we think we might want to look at, and this is at the particular, these are some activities that we might want to use to draw out data or expertise or insights. What do you think? How would that work for your community? For example, we had some card sorts. So, particular cards that have got different words on them to understand what health and wellbeing looks like. Choose your top 5 cards that is about what health and wellbeing means to you. When we actually posed that question, what does health and wellbeing mean to you, to the focus group, it was really about unpacking, well, what do you mean by health and well-being? So really stepping back and checking our assumptions and checking the ideas that we had about particular concepts or experiences that were very, I guess, very westernised, right? Design is quite a Western. Co-design is quite, used a lot in Western societies. And so how might we actually do this in an authentic and culturally humble way? And so we actually used a focus group to not just design or not just, co-create knowledge, but to actually co-create the method and co-create the actual activities and tools that we would be using in the interviews and beyond. And then actually giving those tools and activities a go, if appropriate, and if it fit within the context of the conversation that was being had in the interview. So having them there as an option and really just using them if it was appropriate with the person or the people that we were having that conversation with. Yeah.
I love that. So that agility, that ability to kind of go, does this method work? Is it a fit? Yeah. But then also that idea that just, one word can mean a lot of things to different people, and you have to unpack that.
Absolutely.
I can see that being very iterative, that you're always going through that process. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess for us, and in particular in this project, starting from the ground up, like Selba said before, what is actually most important and what is most fundamental to the community that we are working alongside here. And that was actually getting an understanding of what Ubuntu looks like and means and feels like and sounds like, and how it is actually embodied within community, and instilling those principles into everything else that we did as part of the process.
Selba, Abraham, what did you think about being involved in these kinds of, working on a card sort or seeing people being interviewed in a certain way? What's that like?
I think I already answered this question previously, that the tools, the questions were well crafted. When they came in the room, the community didn't know what to expect, nor did the researchers, they didn't know. But they went with the flow according to the mentality and how the community were thinking, the way they wanted the project to be. So it was just a good flow, excellent flow. And I said, you know what, these people are doing great work, and I love to be here.
It takes great skill to be responsive in that moment and go with that flow. That's wonderful. Yeah. Abraham?
So when we organise our focus groups, we're really transparent with everybody. So if they've got negative feedback afterwards, we're there to hear it. But with this project in particular, everybody was just very happy of how they were treated and how the focus groups went. So they said they were treated with respect. They were open to doing even more focus groups, which is crazy for someone to want to sit for an hour and a half just talking. But I think that comes down to how the researchers carried themselves. So they built the relationship during the focus group. They embedded themselves in that culture, were open to communicating and just being friendly with everybody that they were around, and that worked really well, led to some positive feedback and nothing really negative. So when it came to organising the interviews, people's hands were up before we even asked.
Yeah, that's wonderful. People vote with their feet, as we say, right? You can tell if people, they won't answer if they're not comfortable, and so that trust comes through. Yeah.
And I think if it was purely the research team going out to conduct the focus groups and the interviews, it may have been difficult, but having Abraham there with the focus groups and Ryan, the Black Rhinos head coach, I think that helps with engaging with the community as well. But I've got a question for Rachel. Our thought, and Rachel really led this part of the process, we did shift, didn't we, from what we started with to what you ended up doing. Can you talk to us about the key learning through that?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, my PhD was looking at human-centered design and co-design, and it's a product that people like to purchase, and it is something that can be kind of used in a way of going, look at this brand spanking new shiny thing, co-design, let's co-design. And so I guess, for me, there was that element of, because creativity is so inherent in design and designerly ways of working, very attractive to me in terms of here are some tools, design tools that we can use to elicit particular tacit or latent insights. And for me, I guess at the beginning, it was very much around, okay, these are the kinds of insights that we want, these are the tools that can get us there. And so having that in my mind, and I'd set up this, beautiful sort of spreadsheet and plan about these are the kinds of tools we're going to use. And really it was at the point of really beginning to collaborate with community and Abraham coming along to our research meetings where it was kind of like, whoa, hold, slow down a bit, Tiger. Let's actually look at this from what are we calling it? A culturally humble perspective, and what is actually most needed, what is actually most important, and what is actually going to get us to the point of having a prototype or a program to implement in February of next year. And so it was about taking that step back and slowing down, and that's when we began to test those ideas and those tools in the focus group. And what we ended up with was not necessarily too far off the mark of where we started, but it was the process of examining and the process of really decentering ourselves as part of that. And I, for one, have definitely learned a lot about what it means to design in relationship and authentically with people. And, not get sort of sucked into the, woo, whiz-bang, co-design, I'm a co-designer. And so that has been part of my research maturation process, I guess, as an early career researcher.
Yeah, always learning, and I love that phrase, culturally humble. Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point we're going to open it up to the audience, who've, I'm sure, been now pondering all of these lessons. Questions? Oh, look at the hands. Annette, and then Catherine. And I'm going to stand. Yep. Thanks.
Who's first? Thanks. This is such a fascinating panel. I'm glad I dropped in. Thank you very, very much. I'm a methodologist, so my question is going to be about method. And I'm curious how you manage the tension, and I may be thinking more about the researcher's side of this. How do you manage the inevitable tension between the need and obvious benefit of enacting an emergent, open-ended, inductive approach, which you just were speaking about so well, with the demand of funders for laying out in an application a methodology that's far more predictable, right, and likely more positivistic, right, which is how you can produce evidence-based findings. So in the former, which is your inductive or emergent approaches, the authority is really distributed, and it's emergent and the authority is in the, I guess, the interpretive authority is in the process and the engagement in the community. And in the latter, when you look at a kind of the evidence-based models that get valued by the funders, the authority is considered to be inherent in the tool that you choose in advance, like survey, right, design. I'm just wondering how you handled, or do you see that as a tension that's difficult for you to manage? And how do you manage that?
Look, such a good question, and we've been thinking about this as a team. I guess to start with, at this stage, we're thinking we're really lucky with the funder. I don't think our ideas and vision for this project would have got up if the funder, Vic Health, wasn't open to ideas of co-design and a more qualitative, inductive approach to the project. So we're hopeful with that. I think there's definitely some work to do in building those relationships and working with the funder to fully explain what our methodology will be and to educate on why that's important as well. So look, we're right at the beginning of the project, right at the beginning of the relationship. Really great question, and there is a tension there. And I think definitely on other projects I've worked on in the field, I've directly felt that that tension, which gets in the way of good quality research as well. But we're not seeing that at this stage in this particular project. Rachel, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the tension is real, and for people who, are new to designerly ways of working, it can be really uncomfortable to trust in process, as you say, and I think it is through process that. You're talking about inductive reasoning and inductive approaches. And I think one of the lovely things about a design process and this type of research is that it can also emerge abductively. So each phase of knowledge builds to the next, and so it is through the process that you begin to gain trust in it, and knowing that there is an end point. It's kind of like sitting on a roller coaster and knowing that the downhill is coming, but also knowing that you'll slow speed at some stage as well. And so that tension is real, and I guess also the other tension is around what kind of knowledge and expertise is considered as evidence. And that is something that I think about all the time. And, who are we to say that community knowledge and community expertise is not evidence if it is not presented or analysed or, translated in a certain way. And so I think that's one of the challenges of the academy, isn't it?
Thanks. I had a methodology question, but I'm going to ask a different question now, because we could talk about some of those details, I think, of different types of methodologies, probably all evening. But I wanted to, Abram, you talked about the transfer of skills and how that kind of changes kind of people's lives. And I just wondered about the transfer of research skills and whether or not, because we talk about a meeting of the university and community, but whether or not in this process there's a kind of sense of transfer of research skills to community, so that community perhaps don't need the university, or whether community members want to actually come into the university and become researchers as well as being part of community. So I was wondering about that kind of element of the relationship.
I think it goes both ways. So with the first part, there's been a lot of learning for us as a community organisation as well on how we can support the programs that we're already running with research. So that could be the way that we conduct our surveys during our reporting times, how we actually report on the outcomes that we're achieving during our project. I think just this kind of relationship enables us to learn from the researchers, and then also the researchers to learn from us. And on the second part, I think it motivates individuals within the community to want to go into research so they can support their own communities, because they understand the kind of challenges that their community faces and where the most impact is going to be. So I think there's been some of the people involved in the focus groups that have been, that idea has been put into their head that, okay, I know I can support my community by developing a program that's really going to be beneficial, but where's the most impact going to be? Because if I work with one organization, we can develop really solid programs that will support the people that we're working with. But what about the other community organizations? So if someone gets motivated enough to go into research, then they develop or change policies or impact policies so that every single community organisation that's culturally appropriate has the right tools and the right knowledge to actually support the community members that they're working with. And I think relationships like this ensure that that happens, because it exposes you to new ways of thinking. It exposes you to knowledge that you wouldn't have already had, because you can have a really good program and it can work really well. But for it to be replicated, you need that evidence base, you need that research so that it can be shared, so that knowledge can be shared between everybody. And I think that's what these kind of relationships enable.
Thanks.
Thanks. Question at the back. I get to do the runner. Sure.
Thank you. My apologies for being late and missing the first part. I've just returned from from data gathering for my PhD project at village level in India, and I was just wondering, in your respective projects, whether or not photo voice has appeared as a participatory, collaborative, community-based methodology, and if so, what kind of comments do you have on that? I expected a colonial context, but I didn't expect to meet a decolonising context. So any comments about that in relation to your projects and your findings would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, we've just started the project. We are looking at methodology, but that's going to be based on the co-design process. So we're still working through that. I love photo voice. I see that as having great potential for this project. I love the use of storytelling and visual. I went to a great workshop with Gemma Sue recently in regards to using comics in this as a creative means of research as well. So look, absolutely, that's where I see potential with this particular project. But we're still in the midst of looking at what the methodology will be and the research tools we use. Do you want to?
So we've done, when we first began the project, we looked at, there's been very little publications on design and Ubuntu and decolonisation, the intersection of those three concepts. There has been some literature that has come out of Malawi, I believe, and so those key pieces of research have been formative to the way that we have been particularly designing the method in the sense of it being quite open-ended and responsive and adaptive, and knowing, I guess, recognising who we are as researchers and recognising the centrality and upholding the sovereign knowledge of community. And so that has been, I guess, formative to the way that we've looked at and, designed out the research method. Yeah, and we'll continue to. Yeah, tricky question. Yeah. Winchie Theophilus is the person that we have been looking at a lot, and Rachel Charlotte Smith.
Actually, I come from Malawi.
Hey, well, there you go.
Small world. Shout out to Photo Voice. I've published on that method. I love that method. It's great. And I, as I was listening and thinking, I hope that all of you will also be encouraged to publish as methodologists, because they're, even though we're all interested in method, many of us kind of use it and build that toolkit in our minds, but we don't always share with others what those methods look like. And so, I'll be interested to see what comes out of this project. And it's a good way to kind of, just share an additional layer of that meta-level knowledge, as I think of it. Do we have other questions before we break today?
Just clarify what photo voice is.
Haha, photo voice in 10 seconds or less. So photo voice, obviously by the name, it's a visual method whereby you kind of give over the ability to do the photographing to your participants. So when I've used it, it was, now you could have people obviously using smartphones. I was using it even back in the day with disposable cameras, which was kind of fun because you didn't then see until you got the camera back what did people do. But then the idea is that you can use those images as prompts for storytelling and discussion, and so you might pose a question and people go out and take some photos and come back with a set of photos, and you're kind of going, what does this mean? Why did you take this? Tell me the story behind this. But it's often used with young people because it's kind of a fun way to, not just sit and interview, which can be sometimes a bit boring for some people. Yeah, and then you can publish with photos. Quite interesting. Yeah. Yes, one more question from Catherine. And was there anyone? Okay, a couple more, yay. They go first? Okay.
Okay, thank you for the conversation. It's really interesting. Maybe it's not a question, it's maybe a reflection. And I would like to hear, how are you reflecting on this? Because I think it's probably something which you are into. And it's about, one of the main critiques over participatory design is that sometimes tools aren't able to, express the complexities and the stories that are part from the lived experience, especially when you're working with communities with kind of a diverse cultural background. So I think you mentioned something which was really interesting, which is the centering ourselves. So I think there's something about, finding the tools, because there's a process and you need to somehow enact those results into something. But sometimes that something, which is the method or the tools, fail into expressing that. So I don't know, how do you reflect on that tension, I think? I don't know I think it's probably something which you talked before, because that's basically.
Yeah. Well, I guess just briefly, knowing first and foremost, what's the point of using a tool, and a tool is a tool, and so, not just using a tool for the sake of using a tool, but place and time and point and. They're really, really great to uncover particular unspoken and unexpressed, easily expressed experiences. And so if that's what you're after, well then, a tool might be helpful. But, you're not just going to use it's not a cookie cutter approach. Yeah.
I would add that the tools were used as a guideline. The community were geared to answer any question because they need help. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spoken to them. So that's how I can.
Hi. Basically, we've heard a lot about the community, but was there any selection process, or how did you manage the focus group, both in the NGO part of the work and maybe in the research part of the work, because that's obviously not homogeneous, and there's power struggle and all these kind of things in communities.
Sorry, was a question how we chose a community and started working with this particular community, or was it how we chose the focus group for the co-design process?
Yeah, how the focus group was kind of managed, but not only for the research, also for the association work, the social work, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's...
Yeah. Oh, look, the focus group was chosen. We worked with, and probably Abraham can speak to this as well. So we identified members of the community that we feel could provide really value and was a good cross-representation to learn from about what they saw as the key community issues and how they saw us supporting that and looking at with our particular project. Do you want to talk more about why we chose the participants? Because you were heavily involved in that.
So the way we selected our participants was by identifying, okay, so we're working towards a basketball program. So we need to unpack the knowledge from everybody. So we had the people who were already involved in the existing basketball program, and then the mothers and parents of those who were involved. In selecting our focus groups, it wasn't about identifying who we thought was going to provide the best knowledge. It was just, okay, people would say this person's son plays for this team, they might have some really good insight. This person's heavily involved in this project, they might have some really good insight. So we tried not to be biased. We tried to let the selection process occur naturally. So we didn't want to impact the way the research was going to end up. So there might have been people we had in mind that we thought could have had or provided the best knowledge for this research, but they had no involvement at all within the program. So there's no way that we're going to throw them in just because they're going to provide what we think is going to be what we need from the research. So we needed it to be all about the program, not about us as an organization and what we want to achieve. We needed the results to come from the people that are most involved and that are going to be most impacted. So we allowed it to occur naturally and tried our best not to influence it in any way.
All right, I think on that point we're going to end our formal session, and please do keep your questions. We're going to have some refreshments outside, but please join me in thanking very much our panel today. Fabulous conversation. And tomorrow we have another event, which is a keynote, which is going to be held online. So please join us. And on Thursday, we are running a workshop, which is mainly for people who've maybe not been involved with partners too much, kind of an introductory session around community engagement for HDRs and early career researchers. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you out at the refreshment table.